Welcome to our first WebRTC update of 2015, and welcome particularly to Justin and Serge, the tech and product leads for WebRTC. This is coming live to you thanks to the magic of WebRTC from East Coast Australia, as you can see, to West Coast USA. So yeah, fantastic. Let's hope this keeps working. It's been a massive 12 months for WebRTC, unbelievable. And, you know, I know that the WebRTC teams have been incredibly busy. Serge, I was just wondering if you could kind of bring us up to date on just some of the stuff that's happened over the last year.
Thanks, Sam. I think that if you look back, especially since the Cranky Geek event at which Justin and I and yourself participated in, and for which we videotaped an update. If you look back at just the last 6 months, we've seen an amazing amount of announcements by both high-profile startups and established companies, and not just announcements, concrete launches. And so we're tracking several of these. Very, very interesting to see how people have gone from talking about WebRTC to actually shipping products to actually reaching several millions of users with these products. So that's been really incredible. And at that same event last June, Justin and I tried to lay out a roadmap and share the roadmap out with everyone. So I think that it would just be natural for us to start today's session by looking at the things we talked about and give an update on these particular items, and then look forward into 2015.
Sounds good.
So Justin, you want to tackle a few of the things that we had talked about in June?
Sure. You know, and I'm pretty happy with what we were able to accomplish. You know, we laid out an aggressive set of goals to do for the remainder of the year. And like any forward-looking statement, these are sort of goals rather than, you know, guarantees. But, you know, what we were able to deliver is quite good. If you look at the various milestones we've laid out here, we were able to deliver a substantially improved bandwidth estimation algorithm that works much better on Wi-Fi, allows you to have better quality screencasting, faster time to HD, more likely chance to have HD in WebRTC calls, improvements to NetEQ, our jitter buffer algorithm, as well as CPU adaptation to allow us to better back off when we're using too much CPU for encoding. A lot of improvements to the ICE stack, improvements to how we do retransmissions. We have Opus FEC, so totally wired up. So if your call encounters packet loss, we'll automatically start sending some additional error correction data with no application logic needed. And so we've had some of this stuff in kind of you know, experimental form for quite some time, thanks to like the actual logic that exists within Opus. But now we finally got it wired up completely so that the application doesn't have to worry about it, and the stack will always do the right thing. We've also switched over on Mac to AV Foundation, sort of a better way of grabbing frames from the camera. And this is also really important because now that Chrome supports 64-bit, AV Foundation is really the only way to actually access the camera on the Mac. One of the other things that we didn't get this year, but it will soon be coming in a new version of Chrome, is the improved info bar for accessing camera permission. Previously, the info bar was a little bit hard to see. We have a whole new implementation that's a lot more eye-grabbing for actually asking users for consent to access mic and camera, and that's coming in Chrome 42, we think. So you can try that out on the most recent sort of dev builds. We think it'll make a big difference in one of the sort of initial ramp-up points for applications where users have to sometimes get kind of lost at this step. So we're really happy about that. Getting
to that state hasn't been easy. As you know, we've been talking about this for a while now. A lot of the bugs the community filed help us shake out some of the edge cases. So please, I recommend that everyone go and give this a test again and file issues on crbug.com if you find anything InfoBar related and Chrome 42 related. We welcome all your feedback. It's helping us a ton.
Yeah, and just like, you know, the reason it took so long is it wasn't just changing the info bar for camera permission. We actually had to change all the info bars to meet the sort of new sort of paradigm. So sometimes those things, there were a lot more pieces to touch than we ever imagined.
Yeah.
Going on to some of the other things we talked about, there are additional bandwidth estimation improvements. We can continue to improve things there. For slide switching, when doing screen sharing, things are much faster. In addition, a lot of improvements in just trying to be able to start sending HD by probing the network more aggressively earlier. We have some of this stuff sort of in experimental fashion. That'll be continuing to roll out so that you can get the HD quality much, much faster. We've also improved echo cancellation, more use of hardware echo cancellation, especially on Android. It's some initial work to start preparing ourselves for implementing ORTC. And then support for ICE transports, part of the ITF spec, where you can basically tell WebRTC to only use relay candidates to avoid leaking any information about your IP address, which is good for implementations that want to explicitly provide privacy or location privacy. We also launched a version of VP9, the VP9 codec inside of WebRTC. This is sort of experimental, but we're very excited about this, and we'll talk more about why we're excited. Improvements to video noise reduction, and then a few things that we didn't quite get to, but we're sort of bound by some spec issues, and one being support for enumerating and specifying what device we want to send audio output to, whether we want to send it to a headset or a set of speakers. And we now have a first public working draft of the spec ready to go out. And hopefully with that sort of checked off, we can get to an implementation. And we know this is something that developers have been eagerly looking forward to. So that's I feel like we did pretty well. We didn't hit everything. Media stream recorder, one thing that we didn't get to in 2014, but we got a lot of other stuff done. And so again, a lot of things happening. Really solid year. I'm definitely looking forward to what we're gonna do in 2015.
Right.
That's right. That's great. It's a lot of stuff that people have been asking for, so that's really good news. So, wow, that's a lot of things. So, what are the big things? I don't want to get you to have to do promises, but what are the big things coming up in the next 12 months? What do you see? What's on the work?
So I guess I could start off by saying that I've met several of you, the developer community, both on the native mobile side, on the web side, and Justin has met several of you or have email exchanges, and we've got a lot of great requests. I'm happy to say most of these requests already match what we were thinking about. So maybe we can walk through those quickly now.
Yeah, sounds good.
The first one Justin just mentioned, which was audio output device selection. Now that we have a working draft ready, we can start implementing this. I think it's quite important for users to be able to select devices from the application, from the web application. So that's going to be great. We've gotten, with your help, rid of several, I would call, edge case audio issues. Sometimes these would lead to one-way audio and also the video edge case issues. We've seen a few cases of one-way video. These have all been fixed and are rolling out to stable now as Chrome 40, I think, is rolling out. Several important fixes there. Lots of work done, lots of testing. Thank you again for all your input here. I'll let you talk to hardware acceleration.
Okay, that's another thing that we've gotten continued set of requests for. As we more and more migrate to mobile devices, the ability to do like HD encode, is something where the hardware acceleration really changes the game. Much lower power usage, if you can even do it at all. And we've had a great success with getting the media codec API in Android fully wired up. In 2014, and we're seeing, especially with VP8 encoding being mandated for Android going forward, since Lollipop, we'll have more and more devices that can take advantage of this and really deliver like a rock solid HD stream. There'll be a lot more stuff to kind of tune this out, make sure that all the other parts of the stack are, fully sort of optimized for this hardware acceleration. But this is an area where we think it's really, really important for WebRTC, especially as we expand past browsers and more into mobile devices.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got to ask, please tell me more about what's happening with ORTC.
So ORTC is something where we've been involved in this for quite some time. Microsoft and Hookflash have been very much involved in this. And we see this as a great way of just giving applications kind of more control over their experience. One of the nice things about if you're using the mobile versions of WebRTC Stack is you can kind of go in there and tweak and tune things for your application. And it's nice to be able to have the same flexibility on the website that ORTC is providing, kind of lower level access that allows applications that they want to sort of focus on one specific area. They can go in and kind of set the knobs maybe a lot differently than you could otherwise. And it's a nice sort of architectural sort of set of improvements in some ways that we can kind of have the right architecture, the right sort of API design that allows us to kind of individually act on the right, have the right pieces in place so we can individually act on like a particular media stream instead of affecting the entire call. Just having like the right pieces in place, allows applications to be a lot more nimble. Now, one of the things I get asked a lot though is like, well, which should I bet on, ORTC and WebRTC? And like the main thing I want to sort of point out is like, this is not an either or thing. Like, the whole point of ORTC is adding additional sort of functionality to WebRTC, and we're calling this kind of merged view of things like WebRTC 1.1. That you can basically have additional hooks to do more powerful control, but your existing code will continue to work. And like we've seen such good uptake from WebRTC in the ecosystem already that we just would not want to upset that. We want to provide more power to developers, but we want to make sure that there's no sort of forking of the ecosystem, and no sort of case where all of a sudden, like you use a new version of Chrome, and you have to totally rewrite your application. That just doesn't work for us, and so we're glad to say that that's just not going to be an issue.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. We've got a stack of things in terms of hardware and software implemented and that are going to be implemented, but I was just wondering if I could, while I have the two of you here, I could just go a bit further than that. Really any kind of predictions you have for the near future in relation to WebRTC. Anything you see on the horizon?
Continued focus on mobile. And a lot of the nitty-gritty things that Justin introduced, like being able to turn on hardware echo cancellation, turn on hardware noise reduction, turn on hardware encoding and decoding, everything to save CPU, save battery life, make apps more responsive. That's very much on top of mind for the whole team. Performance, both on Chrome and mobile, performance of the stack, paying off technical debt, just like, that was a hot subject last June when we had this last update, still something we focused really hard on. We want to continue WebRTC. We want WebRTC to be even more nimble and quick. Besides that, I think that VP9, what an amazing opportunity. An opportunity to save 30–40% of your bits for a video stream, meaning that you can do even higher resolution than what's been possible, or open up video communications to a whole group of users that perhaps weren't able to get a satisfying connection or using one of the older codecs. That's going to be huge, and we think it's going to be very transformative, and we're going to continue executing on that. In fact, you should see it being promoted through the Chrome channels at a good pace in the next few months.
Yeah, this concept of, like the next billion users seems incredibly important for everything on the WebRTC teams. It's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Android One is very exciting in that area of, being able to get like a smartphone, a very powerful, device into the hands of a lot more people. And especially people who don't necessarily have a dependable communication system today. And so WebRTC can help, provide a lot of value there, I think. And just on while we're talking about, mobile and devices, one of the other things that, you kind of logical sort of follow on from this is like the Internet of Things scenario. We're seeing smart doorbells, smart lights, smart intercoms, and those sorts of things. And, we're tracking a lot of sort of activity in the space, and by and large, people are choosing WebRTC to power any communications from these systems. So that's pretty exciting.
And it's fun because that initial choice opens up several possibilities for these companies further down the road, right? At first, it can be a simple device-to-device communication, but then all of a sudden, the browser can be pulled in easily. The Android and iOS can be pulled in easily, and so you can build really interesting experiences from that initial choice of using WebRTC as a platform.
Yeah, that's fantastic. While I remember, I really just wanted to say a couple of things about what we've been doing in terms of resources for developers. We've done some work on webrtc.org to hopefully make things better structured, clearer, better laid out. But please, again, we really appreciate all the input we've had. So if you find anything that's not working there, let us know and we'll fix it.
Just want to call out, some people have even submitted some pretty interesting graphs, and I think it was UML flows of how WebRTC is connected. Yeah. We've put up iOS build instructions in response to some people asking for them. So suggestions always welcome, contributions even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise, we'll be updating the articles about WebRTC on HTML5 Rocks and our code labs. And again, we really appreciate all the input we've had. Patches, welcome. Just issues, anything. Send us an email. And finally, we're really pleased to announce that we're going to be moving the WebRTC samples to a new GitHub repo, github.com/WebRTC. And, a big thanks to the folks at WebRTC.io for making that possible. So we'll announce that when it happens. And, as ever, the thing that really makes that repo, makes it valuable, is the input we get from all kinds of people. So, thanks so much. Yeah. Anyway, back to you guys. So I don't know if you want to talk more about ORTC, or if you could just tell us a little more about what's going on mobile, perhaps, either of those.
Yeah, so I think I touched on ORTC, or covered most of that before. The question is, when will we start seeing some of the stuff in Chrome? I think in looking at the first half of this year, we still are waiting to see the ORTC pieces land, or the WebRTC 1.1 pieces land in the WebRTC official spec. But a bunch of us here have been active in that, trying to get that sort of finished off, and then I'm hoping we'll see that actually start to show up in, in Chrome, in the first half of 2015. And I think that, i.e., Microsoft folks are very interested, as I mentioned, have been big supporters of ORTC from, early days. You're going to see ORTC exist there, and of course, your WebRTC code will continue to work. In Microsoft's case, it may go through a shim library. But one of the great things about the design of ORTC is that, it's been designed to allow it to be, the WebRTC existing API can be implemented on top of ORTC. So I think everyone's going to be super happy, and, I look forward to seeing our own AppRTC application running inside IE. So mobile.
Fantastic. Yeah, mobile. It's important, yeah.
So I hear, we do. I think that's one of the great things about WebRTC is that, we sort of started out with WebRTC as this idea for browsers to be able to have real-time communication. And but we all kind of knew that WebRTC was more than just the JavaScript APIs. It was also kind of a suite of protocols. It was also kind of a way for us all to kind of decide on what are the best practices for things to communicate in the 21st century. And so the ecosystem has really expanded past browsers onto these emerging mobile devices. And we've actually been trying to sort of, keep up with this, this transition. And we've been providing, of course, Android and iOS toolkits, SDKs that are based on the WebRTC org code base. Historically, this kind of required a little bit of forging your own iron, that you kind of had to download the code and then figure out how to build it yourself through sometimes some kind of arcane build instructions. So fortunately, we've managed to clean a lot of that stuff up, that you can now, download and build this code with the simple instructions that you can build for any other platform. If you go to webrtc.org, you go to native development, there's great instructions for Android and iOS. You can get your app running on the emulator, get your app running on the device. We have full ARM 64-bit support, especially for iOS. Everything works very well, and so these things are really first-class citizens in the WebRTC ecosystem. I think this is great. We have tons of companies all sort of developing now using the mobile toolkits, and a bunch of people have just told us that wow, like, we had a web version and we could not have done a mobile version if it wasn't for the help that you guys provided. And so, again, we're continuing to invest here, and especially uncovering some of the cases that we don't handle super well today. And that's where things like hardware echo cancellation, hardware encoding all come into play, as well as like some of the smart things like figuring out how to do seamless Wi-Fi 3G handoff and that sort of stuff, just to make everything work magically on mobile.
Two small comments on that. I think one of the reasons that we've been able to not just do this on the web, but to include devices, including mobile and Internet of Things devices, is the amazing amount of work that the community has put into our ITF, our RTC Web ITF community. And so without that, none of this interoperability would have been possible. So hats off to that. And now, I know a lot of people like to pound on these standards committees and so on, but in this case, we've, as a community, we've really delivered, I think. And secondly, should you have or hit any issues with your building of these libraries for mobile or for desktop, we've got our Discuss WebRTC list now has over 4,000 topics and 4,100 people participating that have signed up and that are subscribed to this group. And it's a very active group where people help each other. Most of the threads we don't even have to get involved in, and people are providing answers, tips, source code to get around issues. So we invite you, if you're not already a member, to join in and participate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic development, and just seeing how the community has really sprung up around this. I remember back when I had answered most of the Discuss WebRTC topics personally, and I'm just really glad to see that that ecosystem where there's really a bunch of experts on the forum that are doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You see the same stuff on Stack Overflow, actually. One last thing I just wanted to ask about, just touch on a little bit more. Just tell a little bit more about what's happening with codecs. VP8 and so on, and moving on to VP9, and yeah.
It's our favorite subject.
It's everyone's, I think. So we touched on the, we talked about VP9 a little bit. I'm going to come back to that. Some of the reasons why we think this is really, really important. But what we'll talk about right now is sort of like, those who've been following the sort of WebRTC community, especially in the IETF, have known there's been a kind of a factionalized sort of thing where a bunch of people promoting VP8, a bunch of people promoting H.264. It was never quite clear, like in the WebRTC ecosystem, like what codec would eventually sort of be the one that you could sort of count on for your application. And, in the most recent IETF meeting in Honolulu, you had a compromise was sort of forged of basically saying that browsers will need to support both of these codecs. And I think this is nice for application developers who can sort of say, well, we can just basically any codec that we want to use, we can be confident that the browser my customer is using will actually support the actual codec that I need to use. And so we're guaranteed to have interoperability regardless of two different browsers are talking to each other or anything like that. And I think that's really important for the WebRTC ecosystem. Of course, this compromise was only reached in November. It was ratified on the list, just in the past few weeks. And we'll have to see, implementations actually back this up and ship. But here in Chrome, we're committed to sort of honoring like this compromise, and I expect we'll see multiple implementations, shipping, both codecs in the next year or so. So that brings us to VP9. And as you mentioned, this is really monumental because you can have the same quality with 40% fewer bits. And in addition to just the bitrate savings, which is pretty huge, it also brings in a bunch of great features around SVC, where you get spatial and temporal scalability, which is useful for not just conferencing, but also for markedly better error resilience. So we're kind of working through the packetization, some of the technical nitty-gritty of that in VP9. And so right now, VP9 is in like an experimental mode within Chrome, but we expect to see that sort of graduate to sort of something that anybody can use in their application in not too distant future. And we're going to expose the right knobs so people can start wiring up these sort of things to say, I want to use spatial scalability or that sort of stuff. But yeah, just the tests we've seen, like the numbers are quite impressive. And for HD content, the sort of bitrate savings you're able to use on like this, our next generation codec.
We're also seeing some pretty interesting hardware announcements lining up. So stay tuned for that. It's going to make VP9's impact on the market quite substantial.
And the fact that it's being provided under sort of royalty-free license, I mean, compared to HEVC's $25 million royalty cap, we think that that's pretty attractive too. So.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's just really good news on this world, kind of moving to mobile devices, kind of away from computers to devices. It seems to be what's happening. Well, thank you so much, Justin and Serge. It's great to talk as ever, and a huge thank you to the brilliant WebRTC teams for all their work since we last spoke. Yeah, great people, great engineers, and also all the people who've contributed to, file bugs and issue requests and discuss stuff and all that. Yeah, it's been great for WebRTC. We look forward to see what happens in the next 6 months. So, goodbye from me.
Thank you, Sam. Next time we'll try to launch you to the moon to do this and see if it works.
Let's try that.
All right.